Okay, well I just recorded this once only to have it crash, so let's try this again. This is going to be the first tutorial on how to use inidbi2 to create your database. And we're going to be pretty much just having it save like the player's name. We're going to have it get the player's gear. Most importantly, we're going to be doing a check. So when the player first loads into the server, if he does have a database already made, that little file, it is going to just go ahead and read from that file and apply it to the player. And if the player does not have a database, it's going to create one for him or her. So for testing purposes, go ahead and just go ahead and load the mod, click play. And while this loads, the main things we're going to be functioning on is new, exists, read, and write. Let's go ahead and go into our mission. It actually saved that. Alright, so let's go back here. In order to start this off, you need to kind of plan out how it needs to be done, because the mod gets ran on the server and the server only. It can run on the clients, but it's going to be pretty much useless, as why would you store it on the client's computer, as they can easily alter it when they want. So we're going to start at the init. We want to send certain data to the server, so we're going to want to send in what we want. So the player's name being one, we're going to want the player's UID, because when we create the file, we want it to, like the name of it, to be the player's UID. So it's something that doesn't change, and you just don't have to really worry about it changing unless you got another copy. And you want to be able to check, so if the file exists, we're going to be applying the data somehow to the player. So that means we're going to have one event handler on the server and at least one on the client. So we're going to call to the server, have it run its public variable event handler with the new function and the exist function to check if it exists. So to start off, since we know we're going to be using public variable client to send stuff back to the player, we're going to need the client's ID. So client ID equals client int owner. We're going to want to send in the UID, so UID equals get player UID player. We're going to want the player's name equals name player, and yeah, that's actually going to be it for now. So let's make an array that holds all that stuff. So we have client ID, we have UID, and we have the name. We're going to call it check for database. Why not? Alright, now we use public variable server. So public variable server, then the check for database. Just like so, with the name. Go ahead and copy it. Paste it over here. Remember, it has to be in quotations. Then add public variable event handler. Okay. So in here, if you watched the previous 3 videos, you would see how we got the data that we sent to the event handler and was able to actually store it in multiple variables. We're going to be doing that here. So private data equals this select one. Now, a little refresher, this select one is going to be the array that we sent to it. If we did this select 0, it would only hold pretty much the name of the event handler. So now that data holds the array, we're going to do client ID equals data select 0, since it's the array. UID equals data select 1. Player name equals data select 2. Now this is where we're going to do these little functions here. So for create to check, well, we're pretty much going to be making a object. So as you can see here, if you've ever done object-oriented programming, this being the class, we're creating an object off of it. So we have, remember, this name here can be anything we want, which I will give an example of in a minute. So inidbi equals new, then we want it to be the database name. Now that's going to be the actual file name that gets stored right in here. So we want it to be the player's UID. So it's just going to be UID call OONEDBI. Now we have our new class object right here. Alright, so now we want to check and see if that database exists with that file name inside of the DB folder. We obviously use the exist command. So way to check it is it returns a boolean, so we would make it file exists. That's just going to be our boolean. You know, it's a bad name for one. Exists call any DBI. Now, when I said this can be anything you want, just to show an example, you can pretty much create it whatever you want. It's just, all this is just a name, just like everything else. Alright, now that we have it's going to return our boolean that we need, we're going to check and see if it exists with an if else. So if the file, not what I meant, the file exists, then else. Okay, so if the file exists, we're going to print out a hint, file does exist, getting data. And if it does not exist, hint, file does not exist, creating database. So now we can go test it. Keep in mind, if you're using any sort of public variable event handler, it does not fire when you're in single player like this. So always make sure you're testing with play in multiplayer or on a dedicated server. Alright, line 10, missing semicolon of init server. Line 10. Oh, probably helps to have an equal sign. That usually makes things work a little bit better. Okay. Alright, where did I screw up? Never saved it. Oh yeah, now it works. Alright, file does not exist because there is no file in here. So now, since it doesn't exist, we're going to create one. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and make this in a separate SQF file just to keep everything nice and orderly. Or if you wanted to, wouldn't recommend it, you can put everything in here. But it just makes it easier to access what we need. So go ahead and make another SQF file, or just put what I'm about to write in there. Create database. Okay. Now, we're going to exec vm create database.sqf, and we're going to be passing some things into it. Actually, we're going to be passing all of that stuff into it. So null we're going to be passing all that stuff into it. So null equals then our parameters. So client ID, UID, player name. Now, and on account of being lazy, we can just copy this directly over. This, and this, because this refers to, the actual file that we're in, not anything else. So now that we have that data, we can go ahead and create our database. I'll go and bring this up. Alright, so we're going to use our write command. But as I mentioned before, anyways, since this is a local variable, it will not be accessible from over here. So all we need to do is simply create another class object, like so. We don't need to check if it exists since we're already doing that initial check. And we're just going to use the write command, which is right here. And you can see the syntax for it. What it is write. Now where it says section, this is, as you will see here in a second, how it outputs everything. We're going to call it player information, or just player info, make it shorter. Then key, that's going to be name, since that's what we're going to be putting there first. And then what we want to actually send to it, and we want to send in the player's name. Then you just, like before, call inidbi. So now, when we run our mission, file does not exist, creating database. So we go back to this file here, we're in our DB folder, and we have it here. This is my UID. We open it, go ahead and make a side view. You can see we printed out player info, which is the section. Then we have the key, which is name, being right here. Then we have what we passed into it, being the player name, which is right here. So that's how you would store that kind of stuff. But now, we're going to have to save something and send in something that's useful, so we can actually show how it works when reading it. Because now it'll say, file does exist, getting data. So, go ahead and close that. And here it is. We're going to make a new SQF file, and we're just going to retrieve data. So, just go ahead and copy that. Get data. So, we're going to be passing in only a few parameters, just being the UID. So null equals UID exec VM, then get data.sqf. UID equals this select 0, then any dbi equals new UID, call oo any dbi, just to confirm that I didn't typo that last part. Okay, so we're just creating another class object, not actually creating a new file. Now we're going to go ahead and read some stuff. So, the things we're going to want to read. Well, actually, we're going to want to make a couple more things first. So, we're going to go ahead and pass in our gear and make this an add action so we can regularly do that. So, actually, we'll make a separate one just to save it. So, let's see, player add action, save data. So we're going to want to get our gear, which is our current loadout. So I'm going to get gear equals get player loadout, or maybe it's get unit loadout. Yep, player. And yeah, that'll just be it for now. So we can make a new public variable event handler. Since we're probably going to be adding more stuff into this, we're going to go ahead and make an array. So we're just going to call it save data equals gear, then public variable server save data. So we're going to go make another event handler, save data. So just like before, you can go ahead and copy this, paste it in, gear equals data select 0. Now we're going to want to write this to the server. So we're going to use write player, we'll just call it, yeah, just player gear. We're going to have gear as our sub menu, I guess would be called, whatever you want to call it. Then write gear to it. Call any DBI. I almost forgot, gotta make a new one. Any DBI equals new. And I forgot, you gotta pass in the UID. So we're gonna go ahead and pass that in as well. Okay. Now this should write the loadout as well to the database so we can read it from here. That's what it looks like now. Gonna go ahead and load back into the server. Wherever add action, save data, write failed under UID, undefined variable and expression. Probably because I'm retarded. Now we have to restart it since we cannot reload that file. Save data. Seriously? Oh, that's right. There. Go ahead and save it. Now this file looks like this. We have player gear, we have a gear section, and we have our entire loadout, which is a bit excessive, but we will be able to see it change here in a second, hopefully, because there's not too much stuff. Move real weapons player, move all items player. Go ahead, just limit it down and save it. Alright, now it's actually somewhat readable. So we have all this. As you can see, that's went down detrimentally. Let's say we pick up this. To save it, go ahead and click save. And you will see the launcher has now been added to our gear and database. So now that we have our launcher, as you can see from there, now if I load back into it, I will not have the launcher because we do not have a way to read it yet. However, now that we're going to create that, let's see, here it is. Alright, we have our test there. Now we're going to want to read from the section. So we do find read, as you can see right here, and then you have where it says usage to get the example. So we're going to store this in a variable. We're going to call it gear equals read. Now it's going to be the section name. So in this case it's going to be player gear. Player gear. Then the key, which is going to be gear. Gear. then it's a little confusing at first, but just make opening and closing brackets as an array. Call inidbi. And I almost forgot something actually. Because we're going to be sending this back to the client, we're going to need an event handler on the client, which means we're going to be needing the client's ID. So, where we execute get data, we're going to also need to pass in client ID. So we have our UID, client ID equals this select one. Now we do client ID, public variable client. We're going to just call it load data. So let's go ahead and make our event handler, load data, add public variable. Yeah, you got it. Okay, and just as normal, being lazy, copy it, paste it. So the things we send in, probably help if we actually sent in something. Load data equals just gear, since that's all we're sending in right now. We don't need to make it an array or anything. So gear equals this select one. If you watched the previous tutorial about the public variable client, you understand exactly why. Well, hopefully. Alright, now we're going to use set unit loadout. So that is, we use the object we want to, well, the unit we want it to be on. So player set unit loadout, then the loadout. So gear. Just like so. Okay. So we go into the server. Since we have not saved it with any, actually scratch that, we have RPG. Yep, for example, I'm going to go ahead and delete the database file. Load into the server. It should load as normal. File does not exist. Creating database. The stuff we have right now is just our full gear, including our rifle. However, the gear is not saved, which we can also make that subsection later to make it simpler to read when we do not have it. So we go ahead and save the data. We have what we currently have, which is our MX rifle. Now if we leave, come back in, we have our MX rifle. Now if we pick up the RPG, then we save the data again, and we leave, and come back, we now have the RPG as well, because it's saved our loadout. Now this will also work on a dedicated server, which is what it's intended for, but this is just for that example. So in the future videos, when I go a little bit more in depth on how to do a couple of things, we'll make a periodic save. We will have our own variable. I guess we'll make a little, yeah, why not? We'll make a little shop. So when you kill a unit, you get, I don't know, $100. You walk up to the shop, you can buy something, your data saves, your cash, your new gear, all that kind of stuff. But it's one pretty simple concept once you get this far, because once you have your save data function, after you've already written to it, or your save data file, once you've already written to it, all you have to do is literally just have it periodically do that again. So when you, let's say you do an add action to purchase a weapon, you just have it execute the save data file, which is going to be in place of get data, just another one, and it's going to do everything that it needs to for you pretty much. So you purchase a weapon, it saves the data to this little file here. You get a kill and you earn some money, it's going to save to this file here. It just routinely just like that. So you only have to call one file, and well, simple as that.